Hey everyone, and welcome to the third devlog of my indie game. A shoot 'em up that I'm coding with Swift, SpriteKit and GameplayKit. Since my last devlog about a week or so ago, I've got a few more core features of the game engine implemented. I now have everything I need in regards to collision detection, and I've done it via component, so it's dirt easy for me to give entities the required collision behavior, which configures itself more or less automatically, and with a central place for me to define relationships. And to complement the physics component that handles the detection, I've also implemented a protocol that entities can adapt so they receive relevant notifications on collisions and can act accordingly. I wrote a blog post a few days ago where I go into more details on how I've implemented the physics component, so check that one out for a more in-depth info on my approach. I will post a link to the post in the video description. In this post, I walk through how I have set up the physics component with as simple signature as possible when adding it to entities. Then I have a section with how I define and control the bit masks for the different collision and contact categories from a central place, which also handles generating the correct bitwise operations via computer properties. And finally, a wrap up with how to bind everything together. So if you keep an eye on my blog, there will be a second post coming next week with how I handle the collision notifications between entities. Moving on, next we have the game state machine. Right now I have a game state machine for each enemy and a game state machine for the player, just to get my feet wet with the pattern and have the initial implementation up and running. When the player receives a contact notification with an enemy, it enters the take damage state. And once the contact ends, it goes back to the normal state. An enemy right now has 3 states: the normal flying state, the exploding state, which the enemy enters when hit by a bullet, and then it enters the dead state when the explosion has finished running. I can already see how neatly organized the logic becomes using states. Quite lovely, actually. So moving forward, I will use this design pattern a lot. Then we have 2 under the hood improvements that are important but can't really be seen yet anyway. There is now a remove component that is responsible for completely erasing entities from the game when they are no longer needed. This is completely handled on a background thread for performance. So when an entity reaches its end of life in the game, I just add the remove component and voila! I have also added a component responsible for bullet movements. Previously I had just hard-coded the speed and direction into the bullet sprite, but now there is a component that handles the movement logic. Visually, it still looks pretty much the same, but now I have a place for implementing and handling interesting bullet patterns. So this will start to show once the enemies get the firing ability. Then at last, and maybe also the least, I made it a tad easier for me to add enemies with movement path. It's still very temporary, but at least it let me make some more interesting paths for now during testing. Well, that's it for now. I will move on to implement the first iteration of a HUD. So that will be the next step. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a blog at code.bitbebop.com where I write more in depth and post code examples. Feel free to check it out. And you can also follow me on Twitter where I am at Artstorm. That's it. Until next time.